While it fades away, my name's Jorb. I love gear. This is the Dreadbox Nymphes. It is a 6-voice analog synth in an incredible amount of space. How small, you ask? Here's a Volca for size. How about that, huh? Like 1.2 Volcas. Considering where these can fit, I think that is a serious feat. Alrighty, let's turn off that reverb trail. That was assisted by my Ibanez CS9, a stereo chorus in a lovely matching color palette. Load this patch. We're back to a basic patch. This is not going to be a full demo or review. It's just going to be my first impressions, sort of things that struck me as good or interesting or noteworthy or maybe negative in the first few days I had with it. And this is the second example of a synthesizer on the channel where I have some sort of a relationship with the manufacturer. I asked Dreadbox if they would send me one, and they did, and they gave me a bit of a discount. I can't tell you how much it is, but it is a lot lower than retail. But as I said last time, this is just a way for me to do this sooner because I would have bought it used, especially still unemployed. Rock and roll. So Dreadbox has just enabled me to talk about it sooner and you to hear about it sooner. Cool? I still will be evaluating it at its listing price of $600. You'll see me sort of blend between segments with footage I took on that first or second day where this is vertical in front of the oscilloscope, but now I have it facing down so I can see it and interact with it better while I talk to you about it, okay? Cool. Very first impressions. Love the way it looks. Love how big it is. I cannot think of another 6-voice analog synthesizer that is this big at all. And when you think about other things that are in this range between $500 and $700, I'm just going to look at Sweetwater here for other things in the $500 to $700 range, and we see the Minilog XD, which is only 4 voices, Behringer's Odyssey, monophonic, the original Minilog, 4 voices, Subharmonicon, which is sort of a unique thing, blah, blah, blah. There certainly are not any 6-voice polysynths available new for that price. There are vintage things and used things you could get for about that price, but actually what I'm using for the keyboard controller now is Behringer's DeepMind 12, and you could find a used one around this place. So it's not as unique as it seems in this price range for a 6-voice poly, but none of them are in a form factor like this, and that I think is the huge draw. I think of all those, dialless jams where everybody has a million tiny boxes all into one mixer. This is a really compelling option for somebody looking to do something like that. This has a lot in common with the Dreadbox Typhon, and the Dreadbox Typhon is a monosynth with powerful digital control and not that much panel control, but they do a lot of smart things with it. This doesn't do as many sort of clever side steps. The thing that comes to mind is there's one knob for like the envelope rate on the Typhon, right? And that's because you have fewer knobs, and you want to get to cool sounds faster and easier, and it's not uncommon for somebody to want to change all the timing parameters of an envelope all at once. The approach to control is sort of different on this. It's this balance between, we have these 14 faders on the panel. Instead of, we're going to have a screen and a menu to dig through, everything is one of these faders, but you might have to go through 1 or 2, or depending on the way you think of it, 3 layers to get there. There's good and bad to that. It's easy to be in shift and not realize you're in shift. It's easy to have something going on with the menu selections and not really know where you're at. Sometimes I will have, for example, the LFO selected, and I'll be controlling a parameter expecting to just control the cutoff when I'm controlling the mod amount. I see the good and the bad in it. So many factors come into the end result of a product, right? It is a feature to us that it's small, but because it's small, that's the manufacturing they can handle themselves, and I think that's really commendable. They figured out a way to make a 6-voice poly work for them, and the systems they had in place or the techniques they were used to, all of that can come together, and they can make a 6-voice poly themselves, and they aren't one of the synthesizer giants, in the manufacturing world. I think that's really commendable, and that's one of the reasons why this product is exciting to me, because people want polyphonic synths, and people want classic, straightforward polyphonic sounds, and Dreadbox have proven that small companies can do small 6-voice analog synths and make them affordable. I think that's very, very exciting. Cool. So as far as the way it sounds, I like the sound of the oscillators. I like the sound of the filter, which somebody asked for me. Somebody asked if I would just Don't talk at all, just play the filter. Wonderful, 24 dB low pass filter. There you go, guy. Whoever you asked for it. And a lot of you asked other questions, so I'm going to pull that up on my phone. Whenever I get something new and I plan on doing a first impressions, I like to have you guys, my loyal subs, and my yet-to-be-converted viewers. That's you, whoever I'm pointing at right now. So you should subscribe if you aren't already. Tell me what sort of things you're looking forward to knowing or hearing or learning about a new piece of gear. So the first question, and sort of what I was worried about coming in and what a lot of people are going to complain about going in, is the menu diving as bad as people say it is? And just a quick example, and what people mean is the menu diving. So we have a relatively straightforward sound here, right? If I want to change the amp envelope, I need to hold shift and change the envelope sliders. Okay, so let's add a bit of attack and decay and release. There we go. But if I want to change something like LFO2's delay, I need to go into menu and then point this knob to 2 for LFO2 and then hold shift and move up delay or move up fade. So those layers are a little annoying. You do kind of get used to it, and Dreadbox includes this little menu map. And this shows to me clearly that they know it can be a little tricky, right? And this maps out even the more difficult ones. So there's some parameters you can switch by moving a fader when you're in a certain combination of menu and shift, etc., etc. All that to say, it's not the end of the world, and it's a price we pay for the size and form factor. So it is a hang-up for a lot of people, and it is a downside for me. But Dreadbox seems to realize that and have documentation included to help avoid that. Also included in the box, just while I'm talking about it, is this big quick start guide. I'm not going to change my camera angle, but it's too big. But it has sort of a primer. If you read every panel of this, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And I keep referring back to it, to great full color, full-size print too. Isn't that awesome? It really explains all the stuff that isn't super straightforward. So my example just now, using LFO2, so a lot of the stuff that's not, the first label on the panel is handled in this little guy, which is really, really handy. So the menu diving is kind of a pain, but it is not by any means the end of the world. You hold shift and move a parameter or double tap shift. I like that constellation. It'd be nice if we could just, one press could be a toggle. I don't see any menu option in there, and I don't think the full manual is out yet. I asked Dreadbox, and the full manual isn't available yet, which is okay. I got this early, and I'm flattered by that. But there might be a way to do that in the menus that I just don't know about yet. As far as changing patches, so you hit load, and then click through. If you want to change the bank, hit shift. And you move through. Which you can't cancel out of by hitting menu while you're in that load menu. Somebody asked if it was good at varied sound design, like leads and bass, because all the things they've heard are big brass pads. That is sort of the impression I had as well. And going through the presets, a lot of them were big, sort of almost wailing, spacey sounds. But it is certainly capable of strong basses, especially with all these unison modes. But you'll notice there's more than just a clicking of the envelope. And I'm going to turn this up a little bit, try and show you. Can you guys notice that? There's a little bit of like noise or artifacting. I'm turning this way up. There's There's a second distinct pitch. I don't know if that's my unit or my power or my setup, but I checked the power considerations, and my USB power brick does meet the requirements for it. So it's not that, but it might be some other combination of things or interference. I notice a little bit of noise or pitch artifacting. There's many sounds where that's lost. You won't ever notice it. In fact, I really don't see it as a downside, only a quirk. And I'm going to go back to my Just a Sawtooth patch. While we're still talking about bass sounds, I'll show you another example of this menu diving. If I want to go to a unison mode, and frankly, they're kind of named in a way that doesn't really make sense to me, but they're listed out better here in the menu map, and I know you have a limited amount of space to put them there. But Unison 6 to Unison 4 are the first two. So Unison A, so if I hit menu, and then 1, and then click in, now we've moved to this side of our panel display here, right? And I'm choosing one of these 7 options. So mode 1 is poly, 6 voices. Mode 2 is Unison A, which we learned from our little menu map here, that is 6 voice unison. And I'm going to select that for now, so I hit menu, and then we're back to our normal state. If I want to change the detune, that is this knob, and shift. Cool. Does sound good, and I'm just going to, as fast as possible. Here's our bass sound. There's our clicking again. Just a little bit of attack and release. I still kind of hear it. Maybe this is what I'll use for that example of that artifacting. Here we go. Okay, and if that is a little too rich, I'm going to go back to menu mode to select. Let's do, if I do triphonic, there will be 2 oscillators per voice. So it'll be bigger, but not undeniably rumbly. I bet that artifacting is accentuated with multiple voices. I'm going to add reverb. So that's menu, mode 3, and then once we're in there, these 4 parameters control our reverb. Then I need to get out. Control everything like normal again. Cool. So while we're talking about the reverb, it's really interesting. So I need to go 1, 2, 3, and these 4 parameters now. So it's off. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Menu, 1, poly. And I need to turn down my detune. Cool. We're back to where we need to be. Go back to our reverb. Turn the mix up about halfway. I wouldn't call this a mix. It's just your reverb amount. It's not changing anything about our dry signal. I would have liked it if it could go full wet. This isn't an enormous amount of travel. So I do understand the decision, but let's do some middling parameters here with a relatively high mix. I need to get out of menu to control my filter. That's the one that's gotten me a lot. And now I need to control my envelope. So now, the stuff I just set up for the reverb, these faders are not representative of it at all. It's not anything new for digitally controlled synthesizers. Let's move mix all the way up. I don't really know how to describe the reverb. It feels sort of like a plate to me. Let's turn the filter all the way up as well. make it very big. Turn menu off. And let's turn decay all the way up just to hear what we get when everything's all the way up. Sort of like background noise. It's almost like running around feedback. And you hear it coming back around. I believe that's the fault of decay in size. Primarily. But with filter anyway over like 60, 75% in high settings, especially otherwise, it does kind of run away. Again, I don't think it's a bad thing, just something you need to be aware of and program around. In a mix, you would never notice it. Turn menu off. Definitely sounds good. Cool. Cool. Because you can do with the reverb this sort of as you manipulate the size, it's like you're changing time on a delay pedal. Really wish that was a modulation destination. That's the sort of subtle movement that I think can make patches sound really, really lively. Or even I could bring up the reverb mix on a mod wheel. And I think outwardly the reason you can't put that to any mod source, which I'm kind of going stream of consciousness now. Let's talk about modulation. The first patch I played, which I think I left that, I need to go to load one. Here we go. I think I left it intact on this. So let's turn up a little bit of LFO to pitch. Yeah. You see on the scope and you listen to what you're hearing. As I go up the keyboard, it gets faster. So I thought, cool, your keyboard tracking is like a mod source, right? Well, looking at this, there's nothing in there, and looking at that quick start guide, there's nothing in there either. What I eventually learned, your rate options for the two LFOs, it can track your keys. So it is a cool option to have. Okay, well, what are the modulation sources? It is just the stuff on the panel. So mod wheel, velocity, aftertouch, and LFO2. I don't think that's nothing, and I don't think that's lacking. And considering, so let's give you a real example here. Considering that if I go 1, 2, 3, 4 for mod wheel, I want it to modulate everything. Well, I just need to push up every fader here. This is going to sound really horrible. Actually, I'm going to bring down resonance and shift and bring up, oh, you know what? I can't do my envelope either. But I can have it modulating every parameter if I move the mod wheel. Which I love. There's not a limit on your destinations other than the limit of destinations. It's almost like a modulation bus that you have control over it with your mod wheel. Now, because it works that way, the only other modulations you can control with your mod wheel or your aftertouch are the ones that are available on the panels. So that is LFOs or envelopes to your pitch or your filter. You can't fade in other modulations with the mod wheel or with aftertouch. Which, if we're going to want to fade in modulation, chances are, especially with relatively, traditional or expected polysynth sounds, it's going to be your pitch or your filter. It seems most likely that that's what it's going to be. You still have a lot of good control for modulation, so not a complaint. And one of the first really good user-friendly features. So my mod wheel's at everything right now, right? Well, while I'm on it in the menu, if I hold menu, I'll turn off. And I'm disconnecting all of those modulations. So you don't need to hunt around for whichever one you're trying to control. If you can tell the mod wheel is doing something you don't want it to, or it's doing something you aren't sure of, right? You hear a change, but you aren't necessarily sure what it is. You can wipe it and go back and add the ones you do actually want. I really like that. One of the things I consider very highly are the Waveshapes available, so I'm going to try and shift my focus down to the oscilloscope here. We're going to do full travel over our wave parameter here. Into square, and then while we're here, it's pretty interesting in between. Then just to a triangle. I like that pulse width is a separate control. So now I just move my pulse width up. You sort of get an extra dimension to all these in-between waves, which I am quite fond of, as opposed to having pulse width as part of the travel of your wave control. And because of that, you can have them be separate destinations for your LFOs, but you cannot point your envelopes there, which I would really like, especially an envelope to pulse width. But again, because envelopes aren't a source for any modulation other than your pitch and your filter, you can't point them to pulse width or the wave mount. I'm going to get my focus back on the panel here. My eyes are pretty bad. I hope that's in focus. Cool. Again, on that topic of modulation routings or controls, I suppose I wish that I had. You can point your envelope generator, your filter envelope to your pitch. But because you can't control the pitch of the oscillator to start with, and you can't negatively affect that, I can't have one of the things I really like to do with pitch envelope. I really like sounds that fade up into their pitch, that bend up into their pitch. And because we can't set the pitch of the oscillator down to start with and then affect it with the envelope, I can't do that. So the notes I'm playing don't match what I'm playing on the keyboard. That might just be a failing of me and not being able to transpose down in the right ways. I just want to play the shapes that I want to hear, you know what I'm saying? Not that that sounds bad, but it's not controlled in a way that I can get the result I want. I separated into hell yeahs and hmms. Just this is a little trick, and it might be a little too in-depth for what I would consider first impressions, but you can use the second LFO like an envelope that stays high. And I just watched the LooPop video because I thought he would have figured this out, and I thought he did, but he implemented it differently and probably a little bit smarter. But if you change delay or fade, I can't remember which, all the way up, it will cycle through envelope or LFO2, only once. What I figured out is if you go to menu, so we're now controlling to turn the rate way down, turn the shape to a square, and I'm going to change our cutoff here low so we can hear it, and menu's back on, so we're pointed to LFO2. Let's make the rate a little faster, and point it to, since we're still in menu, this is now a depth, to cutoff depth. Okay? I'm going to slow the rate way down, and you can see it takes a super long time, I'll even speed it up a little bit, to cycle that square. Almost to the point where, yeah, there you go. You almost don't expect it to happen. That combined with, I need the menu map, that combined with, I need to sync shift menu, yeah. So shift menu gets us into this little box, and this box lets us key sync our LFOs. So while shift is on, and I move the wave slider to the top, that will flash to show me I did something, and then I will save it with menu to get out. So what I just did is now LFL2 is synced to key press. Cool. And so we're starting high. We're always starting high on LFO2 with our square wave. And now if I go into menu, LFO2, shift to turn up the delay, I can use that like envelope. I can turn up delay. Then I have an additional envelope that I can point to any source that stays high. Cool, so I'm going to slow that down, get out of menu, get out of shift, and then speed up our first filter envelope, and turn up the envelope contribution to the filter. So we have, effectively, this second stage of our envelope. Cool. I don't necessarily consider that a first impressions thing, but it's something between looking at the menu map and looking at the panel controls that I came across on my own. And sort of shows that even if you feel like totally stuck or limited, chances are that even if people will say, oh, this is limiting, or oh, you can't do that much, chances are there's always some little tricks to find to give it a little more flexibility. Cool. LFO1 is per voice and LFO2 is generic. I really wish LFO1 was available in here as well, but again, like all 7 options are routed out. So unless we have another long press or some other, trickery, if it does get changed in firmware, it's going to be like a really cumbersome implementation. I'm sad that's not here. I believe it could be fixed in firmware, but if it does, it's just going to make the menu diving a little worse. So. Cool. All right. When these first came out, a lot of people drew the comparison to the JuNo, understandably so. 6 voices, we have 1 oscillator and a sub, plus noise. And if you look at some of the parameters, it's exactly what's on the JuNo. I think that is just kind of a coincidence because the JuNo is a lot of the baseline, what do you want to have control over features. But this has a second envelope, and this has a second LFO. And the way the oscillator works is different, so it's clearly not supposed to be exactly the same. So I wouldn't even say that it's clear that this is inspired by, but it doesn't make me want to plug into stereo chorus, which I did, and I shall. And I think that adds so much. Cool. I love that. Again, it's not hard for me to say, oh, just get your chorus pedal and plug it in. I just have a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people don't have something like this laying around. So the inclusion of that would have been greatly appreciated, even if it was digital. And chorus is not unique to the JuNo. So many 6-voice 80s analog polys have it, and I think it's kind of a lot of the life in those sounds, and it's kind of a lot of the life in those things. But for even $60, you can get something like this, which sounds really good. I'm not going to demo now. I might do when I do a full review. Are you guys going to be mad if I don't plug that in? You probably are. God damn it. All right, hang on. Okay, we're back. Cool. There you go. Yeah, it sounds great. Cool. I think we're going to see this exact setup on a lot of DAWs tables. You guys might know, Dreadbox makes a chorus pedal, but it's not stereo. And I kind of think stereo is essential for this. I'm reading it right now just to double check that it's not stereo, and it is not. Which is a huge shame, because it'd be cool to have a Dreadbox chorus to plug to, right? Huh? Dreadbox, you're going to make a stereo one? Anyway, this is not inaccessible to most people, or any other chorus pedal, which I think would do a mighty fine job as well. I do, in fact, prefer my CS9, plus I like the way it looks. But I will leave this now here, just because I don't want to change them. Great patches again. Okay, lightning round. What does Jorb think? And let me pull up my notes again in case I wrote anything coherent. I probably fucking didn't. I think there is consideration to the way people are going to use it. Things like that clear all modulations and including this menu map shows that they understand what it's like to sit down and work with one of these. And there is clearly work done to mitigate some of those downsides. And I think to a great effect. It is not hard to use. There's nothing that's tricky to understand, right? It's just remembering, which comes with time. And I've only had this for a few days. So I refuse to put that against it. It's just how comfortable am I with it and not quite enough to do the things quickly that I would like to do quickly. I think it sounds wonderful. I love the form factor. I think it looks really, really good. The synthesis options that are available are all the ones you really, really need, you really, really want. Because I'm a tweaker, would have liked to have modulation routing in full for the first LFO and for the envelope generator. I would have liked to have pitch control of an oscillator. I think as far as doing the JuNo thing, you can get there with stereo chorus. I like the reverb. I think it sounds good. If you're going to include a DSP, they must have considered chorus but decided against stereo. And with that in mind, people are going to bitch about it not being in stereo anyway. Chorus just would have been worse. That's not a huge problem for me because I have dozens of ways in this room to make it stereo already. But it would have been really, really nice to see that included on the panel. In fact, I think mono might be a benefit to people doing those, table full of objects jams, because now you only have to mix in mono. And if you have a table full of objects, get a guitar pedal. So I don't really mind that it's in mono for lack of a stereo reverb would have been cool. Cool. I think the filter does sound good. Oscillator sounds good. I like the wave options you have. Filter sounds good. And those little artifacting quirks, not the end of the world for me, not the end of the world for anybody. So it really leans itself towards sort of big wailing pads, and I think that's why a lot of people are going to want a 6-voice synth. I don't think it's impossible to do other sounds on it. I just think that this is sort of asking you, especially with the reverb and the per voice LFO, it's sort of trying to get you to do pads and brass and those big wailing sounds. Cool. There you go. I'm going to learn a lot more about it. We'll get a full Jorb view and demo like I always do. Initial impressions, super positive. Dreadbox has done an excellent job. I really can't wait to see the next polyphonic synth they do in a box like this. And maybe it has control like the Typhon. Maybe it has a couple more voices. That is something I really relish the opportunity to play. So thanks again to you guys. Thanks again to Dreadbox. Cool. I think these are really, really cool. Price point's amazing. Form factor's unbeatable. So if you're interested in one, I'll leave a Reverb affiliate link below. And right now, that's all going to be retailers, which is good because you're supporting Dreadbox more directly. If this is in a few years, buy one used. Nobody's going to blame you for doing that. But I can get a kickback no matter what you buy from that affiliate link. And if you haven't signed up, I get some cash too. So do that if you want. I'm going to find some sound to play myself out. Appreciate you watching, you subs. Appreciate you watching, you yet-to-be-converted viewers. Thanks again, Dreadbox. Link to the site with more information in their dealer network will be below as well. I love gear. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.